All right, OnePlus made a foldable smartphone called the Open. I actually like that name because it encourages you to open up and experience this whole new form factor. The thing is, I haven't looked at a OnePlus smartphone since the OnePlus 9 because they used to be the underdogs offering flagship level performance at an affordable price point. But over time, their phones got expensive. It almost got to $1,000, which was really crazy. It wasn't the OnePlus that we all loved back in the day with the OnePlus One. But there's something special about the Open that makes me appreciate foldables even more. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. But I want to kick things off with the price. So the Open starts, or it's priced at $60.99. And why am I air quoting that? Well, turns out that OnePlus has an interesting trade-in program where you can bring in or trade in any phone in any condition and take $200 off of the Open, which means that you could technically bring in like an exploded Galaxy Note 9 or a BlackBerry Bold or even the old school Motorola StarTAC and still qualify for the trade-in program. So that effectively makes this a $1,500 smartphone. But let's put the pricing conversation aside and talk about what makes the Open unique compared to the competition. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the form factor. Now, having used the Galaxy Fold 4 for a while, I can say that the Open is just a perfect example of what a foldable smartphone should look like. Take the cover screen, for instance. You're greeted with a 6.3-inch 2K AMOLED LTPO display with a 120Hz refresh rate that features a peak brightness output of 2,800 nits. That's more than what you need to view content outdoors. It's almost the same size as the Pixel 8, which makes it much more usable compared to the narrower form factor of the Galaxy Z Fold 4. You see, if I bring the Galaxy Z Fold Fold in comparison to the Open side by side, you can tell how narrow that cover screen is, which makes viewing content just a bit restrictive, especially since the text looks smaller. Sometimes the apps or some apps actually don't support this full aspect ratio. It was just restrictive to a point where it just forced me to use the phone in its unfolded state, where you don't need all that screen real estate to view Instagram or things like that. Whereas the Open's cover screen, it just feels more like home. You know, this is perfect for a single app because it's just the right aspect ratio. Now, opening it up reveals a 7.8-inch 2K LTPO AMOLED display, just like the cover screen. So you're ensured to get a consistent viewing experience. It still features 2,800 nits of peak brightness output. OnePlus has incorporated an ultra-thin glass layer on top of the flexible OLED screen, plus they've added an anti-reflective screen protector, and this alone makes a world of a difference when viewing content outdoors. Unlike the Fold 4 or the Fold 5, which is essentially the same phone, the screen is less reflective, which helps you get a little bit more immersive with the content that you're looking at. The other thing I noticed is also the hinge is a lot easier to open on the Open versus the Fold, where you actually have to give it a little bit more pressure to get it opened. You certainly can't do it in one hand, like if I'm doing a live demo right now. Yeah, like I really have to get in there. Whereas with the Open, it's like super simple. You don't need to really like put a lot of pressure in. So that's a really cool feature. I did notice that the colors look slightly desaturated compared to Samsung's offerings, but I like that. It's more representative of how I want my content to look like. You're still going to notice a crease in the middle, but it doesn't interrupt my workflow. I do want to point out that the screen, when unfolded, does not stay completely flat, so that might be a bit annoying. But having played around with this phone for the past few weeks, I've got to say there are a lot of great use cases for this new form factor. For instance, if you're into consuming web articles, having this massive canvas can help with reading. I mostly use it to browse auction sites and catch up with news, as well as write out scripts and emails. Also, it's great for watching movies or shows on a plane. You can just put the screen in laptop mode and give your hands a break. Seriously, this is pretty dope. But above all of that, having a foldable smartphone can bring some exciting multitasking experiences. And OnePlus has built a few cool gestures that are useful. For instance, you can split the screen by swiping 2 fingers down the middle, or just dragging icons from the taskbar to the left or right-hand side of the display. You can also hop between apps in split screen mode by simply tapping the bar right over here. There's also the ability to expand the app. Another interesting feature that OnePlus has added to the taskbar is the recent folder. So let's say you downloaded a photo or a document from the internet, you can share those recent files and photos directly from the taskbar by dragging to apps. There's also triple split mode that lets you drag a third application from the taskbar. I love this feature since I can open up my messaging app like Beeper and my email client and a web browser and switch between different layouts seamlessly. It feels organic, and I appreciate the thought process that went into designing this new orientation. The screen switching can be configured in different manners. You can choose to continue using the screen right after you fold the phone, or swipe up to continue using, or simply turn off the screen. I prefer the swiping up gesture, but keep in mind that if you're coming from the triple or dual split mode back to cover mode and then decide to go back, the phone doesn't store the layout for you. You're gonna have to rearrange all the apps from the beginning, which is really frustrating. I should also mention that both the cover screen and the main screen share the same layout, meaning you can't really customize both of them separately. You can't have two separate wallpapers. And I find that really odd because Samsung lets you do that on the Galaxy Z Fold series. So OnePlus, I'm sure you could just add that with a software update. Let's switch gears and talk about the design and build quality of the Open. And OnePlus hasn't cut any corners in this department, which clearly reflects the hefty price tag that they're asking for. They're using a combination of cobalt, molybdenum, alloy, and titanium materials to minimize the weight while also increasing durability. This thing weighs around 239 grams, which is 20 grams heavier than the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it's about 14 grams lighter than the Galaxy Z Fold 5. It's also thinner than the Galaxy Z Fold 5 in both unfolded and folded modes, so that makes handling a breeze. The buttons feel nice and tactile, the fingerprint sensor is integrated with the power button, and they've also managed to find room to integrate the alert slider. Now, this is probably one of the best OnePlus features that I hope to see other Android manufacturers adapt. If I'm being too picky, I just wish that the edges around the hinge were slightly curved for just better grip in my hand, but that's just me. The phone does come in two colors, Emerald Dusk and Voyager Black. The black model comes with vegan leather at the back, which I don't mind, and OnePlus does include a case in the box. Personally, that just adds more bulk to the phone, and I also started to notice that the screen protector for the cover screen started bubbling up when this was installed, so I just ended up removing it and just been rocking this thing caseless, and so far it's been just okay. Speaking of cases, here's a quick word from today's video sponsor, Fantex. I know, case video for phone video. Why not?
I like it so much, it's currently my gaming case, for real. The Fantex NV5, the perfect hybrid between a fish tank and your regular mid-tower with visuals of your components prioritized without compromising on component fitment. Put in your favorite AIO at the top or the side, support the GPU, hide the cables, and enjoy the built-in lighting, all for an affordable yet elegantly matured experience so you can envy responsibly, my friends. The NV5, check it out below, and please don't keep your case on the floor. Gosh.
Okay, so we need to talk about this massive and stacked camera system. Seriously, this is probably the biggest camera bump that I've ever seen on a smartphone, and OnePlus is going all out in the camera department, guys. So you're greeted with a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 48 megapixel main shooter that features Sony's all new Lydia pixel stacked sensor, and a 64 megapixel telephoto lens. The selfie camera on the main screen features a 20 megapixel sensor, whereas the front facing camera on the cover screen features a 32 megapixel sensor. So clearly they're not giving up on the megapixel war that all these other brands are fighting for. But the real question is, how does it all translate in real world use? All right, so I've spent pretty much almost a day trying to analyze the photos that I've taken from the OnePlus Open, and I'm gonna say, in a nutshell, it's not a terrible camera. It's just that sometimes when you're using the camera app, it feels a little cluttered. For instance, the shutter button isn't as responsive. It can get laggy, even though this is a pretty powerful smartphone with the Snapdragon SoC. Also, another thing that I noticed is the consistency between all these three telephoto lenses is off. You can notice that shift in white balance, especially when you're jumping from the ultra wide angle all the way to the telephoto lens. There's plenty of detail, and OnePlus is oddly just adding a lot of sharpness or post sharpening to the photos, which kind of takes away from the natural look of the image. The dynamic range is pretty good, but sometimes it does tend to overexpose slightly, which can result in slightly washed out images. Again, these can be addressed in post, but if you're the type of person who wants great looking photos straight out of the camera, this phone might not be the best pick. Low light performance is also not the greatest, even though you've got a stacked camera system with 50 plus megapixel sensors, you're still going to lose detail. And I think a lot of that has to do with OnePlus's post-processing system integrated into the Open. So that's something to take note of. If you're patient enough with the camera app, you can get away with some really interesting results. But like I said, for run-of-the-gun quick shots in low-light scenarios, this camera just can't keep up with the other expensive flagships. I also want to quickly talk about video capabilities. And again, this phone, it's decent. The colors slightly look washed off. It's not exactly to my liking. The other thing I also noticed is the stabilization is kind of wonky. There's a little bit of jitteriness that you can notice when you're just casually walking on the street and capturing video. Even in well-lit scenarios, you can start to see noise being introduced into the frame, especially with the telephoto lens. And so from a video quality standpoint, this phone doesn't really compete with the iPhone, for instance, because that phone is just a gold standard when it comes to video shooting capabilities. And I think OnePlus, they're trying really hard, and it's just that it's not there yet. The Open has all the horsepower that you can possibly think of. It has the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 SoC with 60 gigabytes of LPDDR5X memory, as well as half terabyte of storage. It's also got a dual cell 4,805 mAh battery, which for my usage pretty much lasted the whole day, which is actually pretty good considering all the screen that it has to power. So I'm not complaining. But what I'm going to be complaining is with regards to the lack of wireless charging. You see, this is a OnePlus thing to do. It's such a OnePlus thing to do. They give you all the features that you need, or sometimes that you don't even need, and then they take away the essential thing that you just use all the time. You see, I'm somebody, I use wireless chargers every single day to charge on my phones, and not having this alone was a huge deal breaker. You might not be on the same boat as I am, but for a phone that costs $1,700, it's just not acceptable. We did ask OnePlus regarding this illumination, and all they had to say was we had to eliminate that feature in order to make the phone super thin and somewhat easy to handle. But come on, like, I don't think anyone's gonna buy that. But hey, at least you get a charger in the box. In this case, it's a 67-watt Super VOOC charger, so it should juice up the battery fairly quickly. But yeah, no wireless charging. Why? I also wished if they included a desktop extension, kind of like Samsung DeX, where it allows the user to connect a Samsung Galaxy device to an external monitor over USB-C and sort of get a PC-like experience. But you don't get that with the Open. It clearly has the performance to back it up, but you know, I feel like that's just a missed opportunity. Also, a stylus would have been awesome, especially for artists who can just take advantage of this massive canvas to explore their creativity. Again, these are certain things that could have made the OnePlus stand out a little bit compared to the foldables, the other foldables in the market. So having used the Open for the past 3 weeks, I've got to say there are a lot of things that OnePlus has done right, as well as a few head scratchers. You see, for starters, it's a great alternative to the Galaxy Z Fold 5 from a usability standpoint, because this cover screen, it doesn't feel restrictive anymore. You can actually use it comfortably with all the apps that you love. You're also getting a bigger display compared to the Fold 5, and the build quality is surprisingly really good considering the price point. It's just as good as the Z Fold 5, but definitely miles better than the Google Pixel Fold, for instance. Unfortunately, as much as I want to get my hands on that smartphone, it isn't available here in Canada, but having spoken to some of my peers in the tech community, they have the same opinion. This phone just feels polished on the outside, which is a great thing. Really, the only thing that's drawing me back from recommending this phone is the lack of wireless charging as well as the camera system. It's just not or nearwhere as close as what you get with an iPhone or Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra or even a Pixel. You can throw as many megapixels as you want and market the whole Hasselblad collaboration as a revolutionary step in smartphone photography when you're ultimately tied down by run-of-the-mill software processing, because that just leaves a lot of potential on the table. I'm also a bit concerned about warranty and repairability of this phone because it's a whole new form factor for OnePlus, and the service centers are not as accessible, at least here in North America, like Apple, Google, or even Samsung. This phone is IPX4 certified and it can withstand splashes. Interestingly, they have built-in drainage holes on the hinge to prevent water from staying into the core components. Also, they've tested this hinge like 1 million times by opening it, which basically translates to 100 folds per day, or the fold that just lasts for more than 10 years. So clearly they've taken the necessary precautions to make sure that it doesn't malfunction. But in case if something happens, I am not sure what that whole support process is going to look like. You see, foldables aren't for everyone out there. The primary reason why they haven't gained as much traction is solely because of how expensive they are. These things cost 2 to 3 times more than an average smartphone, and that's a lot of money to ask for considering the current economic climate. But for those who want to stay on the bleeding edge of technology, and if they want to experience a device that can take productivity to a whole new level, I think the Open offers something unique. Plus, it's the cheapest alternative to the Galaxy Fold 5 and the Pixel Fold. It's a new player in the foldable game, and I guess that's a good thing, guys. On that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're able to take away everything that you needed to know about the OnePlus Open. Let us know what you guys think about in the comments. If you are on the fence about picking up an Android foldable smartphone, would this be on the top of your list? I'm curious to know. I'm Ibo with Hardware Canucks, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Also, spend responsibly.